Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, everyone. Today I am talking to my friend Elizabeth Henson, and we are going to be talking about building authentic relationships in business. And the common word that most of you might understand is networking. Um, Elizabeth, I feel like that's such an understated word for what you do, but let's start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into networking.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. I always love our conversations because we were introduced as like the two community builders. So it's always such an honor to be in your space. And I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a professional community builder. I help business owners build communities online so that marketing is easy. And I have found this way to take my superpower in building community and networking and turn it into something that people really want, which is better marketing for their business.
I love it. And I think that's, I have a lot of conversations about networking, and, there's the one side that's very loud and vocal saying networking doesn't work. And then there's that quiet side that's just doing it and succeeding. And, I know you're in that side. Um, One of my friends the other day said, Jeff, I just realized why I'm having so much frustration in life. I'm swimming upstream trying to convert those who don't believe in networking. And I've spent a lot of time on that as well. So, how did you go from what I'm going to call networking, which is, I think a lot of people consider those networking events where you show up and give your business cards and say, okay, would you like to be a client of mine? No. Do you want to be a client of mine? No. Okay, thanks. Well, see you next week.
Yeah.
How did you go from that to being a true community builder?
Oh my gosh. I love this question. And a lot of this is full circle because I actually just had my biggest sales month ever. And I really looked at what did I do differently. And the craziest thing is, like you said, I wasn't launching anything. I wasn't publicly selling anything. These are all clients that came to me saying, hey, so and so, Jeff told me that you're the expert in X, Y, and Z. Can you help me? And it's like these clients, these opportunities just fell out of the sky. And I'm like, what did I do? And it's truly comes down to these community building skills that like are within me that I've been fostering and learning how to do even better, which is authentic listening. And when I go to these, it sounds so simple. It's like, what? But
Sorry, I wasn't listening. Could you repeat that?
I know. I just got back from an event with 1,000 people, and I had been to this same event 4 years ago. And I was really excited to see what is the difference in Elizabeth now versus Elizabeth 4 years ago. And I'm a completely different person. But as I was meeting people and talking to people, I kind of made it a point to not even really talk about what I do, but just to genuinely listen to what they do and ask them questions. And, not like, oh, I want to work with you questions, but just like, tell me more. Like, what kind of people do you help? What's your favorite person to work with? Who can I connect you with? How can I support you in your next project? I mean, even just asking somebody, what's your next project that's coming up? And then coming up with ways to support them or to give them feedback. And when they would be like, okay, so tell me what you do, I would give them a very quick answer and kind of just avoid it altogether, not out of lack of confidence, but just knowing that this isn't really the space that I want to sell people. I just want to make those connections in hopes that after the event is over, they're either looking me up online or we're going to continue that relationship. And I couldn't believe, comparing it to 4 years ago when I was practicing my sales pitch as I shook hands, right? the amount of people that leaned in to that conversation or found me again throughout the event or introduced me to somebody else. I mean, it was small, but like a massive shift at the same time. Did that answer the question?
Well, it answered it in my eyes. So I think,
Okay.
the reality is, I don't belong in those rooms anymore where everybody's looking for a client. I feel that predatory energy and it drains
Mm,
me.
hmm.
Now, you and I are going to talk about something that most people will never fully comprehend, because I get a lot of people who are full time professional networkers, or so they say. But
Hmm.
the minute they get alone with me, they start the pitch slap and they're like, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. Why won't you buy my stuff? And it's like, well, you sell products for teenage girls. I am not a teenage girl.
Yeah.
Like, so let's talk about community, because I feel like networking is a ground level term, and sorry, but it's been a little bit sullied by the people who have quotas and things like that. um, I'm going to ask you my favorite question, and this is what I get from people who claim to be networkers. When I say my clients are 100% referral based, I operate only on networking, and that's where I don't deal with strangers. I don't do business development. I don't do lead gen. Um, what I hear all the time is, "Oh, you must be starving."
Mm.
So let's talk about why Elizabeth, and we're going to throw the standard questions out because this is going to be a learning curve for a lot of people. Why does a community, your community, why is that better than traditional one-to-one networking?
Yeah, and it's not even my community. I like to say it's my methodologies around community, right? Because it's not really like a Elizabeth deal. In fact, a lot of my clients end up having way bigger or way more, successful communities where I'm like, I just have this little space over here where I'm teaching people, how to create spaces where people feel seen and heard. And to really break down the difference in networking and community building, networking is I'm going to meet people in hopes that, there's a result, right? Whether it's sales, whether it's in hopes that I get on their podcast. Whereas building community is you're facilitating a space for people to come together over a common vision and they feel seen, heard, and understood, and something is drawing them to that mission or that vision. So I feel like communities are very vision driven, and networking is kind of a bunch of individuals coming together to a space looking for a result that is somewhat self-serving.
Yes, and I want to clarify that, a community. So let's describe what a community is to you, and um, don't give away your trade secrets. But what do you think are the things that make a community different than, I'm going to use the word LinkedIn group. I know there's
Mm-hmm.
Facebook groups. There are some that are just groups. There's
Mm-hmm.
no better word for it than group. What makes a group a community, and what makes a community special in your eyes?
Yeah, I think again, it boils down to that mission, right? When you bring together for a common mission, right? It could be something really, extreme, like let's like focus on how to get rid of gun violence, or it could be a breastfeeding group for mothers. But there is a common theme that people are coming together to support. And to me, that's what drives a successful community is I'm coming here to learn this. I'm coming here to support this. I'm coming here to meet like-minded individuals so that I don't feel so alone. To me, those are all like kind of check boxes of a community, whereas a group might just be like Elizabeth's amazing business group,
Uh,
right? But there's not a come join Elizabeth's amazing business group so that we can support more nonprofits,
yeah,
right? It's like it kind of ends with just
I got
here's a
stuff to
group.
sell. I got a quota, and I'm here to sell to you. And God help you, you're in my group. So
Yeah.
prepare. Yeah, it's like when you go on those the rides at Niagara Falls. You got to put on the jacket so you don't get soaked.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I'm not afraid of sales. I definitely sell in my group, but there also is so much value that people can get in coming to that group that's absolutely free. And it's not a hard sell. It's like, hey, I'm actually kind of doing you a disservice if I don't let you know how I can help you, right? It's that kind of, I don't want you to miss this opportunity versus, like you said, I have to hit a quota. It's very different.
Well, and I suspect that trust, authenticity, heart are the core of a community, because if you're just about sales, at some point somebody buys the thing you sell, they move on and they're gone. Whereas when you have that cause, and I'm part of a lot of communities. I'm also leaving all the groups I've been in because I've been pitched enough. But I love the community idea, and this would be my argument for local businesses. You're missing out on community when you're spending all your time doing paid traffic and, trying all of those, I call them icky sales tactics. If it feels icky, why are you doing it? But
Yeah. Yeah, and your conversion rates are going to be so much lower. I mean, if you're really a geek about sales and marketing, like paid ads are great. They're great for scaling something that already works and using messaging that already works in person in a room that's truly, like you said, authentic and genuine. But in general, paid ads, your conversion rate is going to be really, really low because you're speaking to cold traffic. Whereas networking, community, truly being in the world to serve, how can I serve today? How can I help people today? Your conversion rates are going to be way, way, way higher because, like you said, you have that. It's not just know, like, and trust, right? But it's know, like, trust, and hold space for people to be the best version of themselves in your presence.
and I think it's going to sound a little weird, but I'm obsessed with Taylor Swift as a marketing brand. Like, I don't know how she got this, but somewhere in her youth, she said, I'm going to build and maybe it was around the music at first, but, when Taylor touches something, they have this, what they call the Swift effect. When her relationship, I can't remember her boyfriend's name or who he plays with, but when it was announced, sales of his jerseys skyrocketed. Like, everybody in
Yeah.
Taylor's community is diehard Swift.
Yeah.
You self-identify as a Swiftie, not it's not something somebody imposes upon you.
Mm-hmm.
So you do this for a living and you also do it for your business. What are some of the pitfalls somebody's going to fall into when, what are some of the big lessons you learned and you went, wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, even though I was really great at community building 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't have the training, the coaching training, the self-development work that I've done since then that has only amplified a skill that was already there. So, I think the roadblocks that I come to are like, meeting people is so easy for me. Supporting people is so easy for me, right? Like, how do we continue to make sales and profitability easy, right? Because yes, I'm going to be a world changer regardless, and I'm going to help people regardless. But I definitely hit a plateau or a challenge in my business where how do I make community building as a skill in itself valuable, sellable, right? So that was definitely a journey. It was not an easy one, but I feel like I did crack the code.
I love it. So we're going to talk about where people can acquire some of the skills. And again, I'm not saying give us your secrets, but you mentioned Mel Robinson in your show notes.
Mhm.
What sort of resources helped you become a better community builder?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's really the self-development piece. If you're familiar with the four agreements, really learning how to not make assumptions about other people, um, to always come from a place of every single human being has infinite potential. Because I think a skill that most people don't have is the ability to like quiet their own judgment and their own ego. And I've done a lot of work with experts on how to show up in the world without my own ego and without my own judgments. Now, of course, they're still present, right? But this is a skill that you learn that everyone in a room has infinite potential. And if you think about people who suck at community building, it's because they're like, social climbing is like a term that I've heard people use before, right? Like they want to find the most successful person in the room and they're going to attach themselves to that person. Or the people who are all up in Taylor Swift's or Jenna Kutcher's comment section, and that's where they spend their time.
Yeah.
And my very early days of teaching people how to build community, I said, look, you've got to put yourself in places where you are the big fish in a small pond, right? Like Jenna Kutcher's not going to notice you. Taylor Swift is not going to notice you. But there's a business owner out there where you could actually make their day by supporting their business, and they're going to remember you forever, right? So how can we position ourselves in a space where we are actually changing the trajectory of other people's days by just supporting them the same way we would support some big name person that will never notice us in their comment thread,
Yeah.
right? So that's how it started, was like taking these little lessons and what am I doing differently? Where am I spending my time? How can I teach that to others who are wasting their time trying to be seen?
Taylor, look over here. Look over here.
Yes, yes, when they could actually be changing people's lives and making a difference. And I've just been able to amplify that as I've learned how to see infinite potential in everybody and how to quiet my own judgments.
Well, and I literally have chills from that because I think you and I, we seriously were cut from very similar cloth. I look at it and a lot of people want to go on those review sites and slam a local business because they had to wait 5 minutes for their food or whatever it is. um,
Mm,
wouldn't it be nice? And just think about the energy we'd have if instead of complaining we went out and we elevated, and believe it or not, Elizabeth, my mandate is I try to elevate one local business every day. And
yeah,
that at first it felt daunting. I was like, oh my God, how do I do this? And now it's just, wherever possible, I post a review or post a comment. And sometimes it's just as simple as, telling my friends, oh my God, you've got to go to this restaurant or you've got to go to this store or whatever. Um, but it's that power of community. And it's kind of funny. You and I are discussing this in a digital format. You and I have never met face to face, but we were brought together when somebody said, "You two need to know each other." Thank you,
yeah.
Joey. But it fascinates me that we're trying to rebuild what humanity has always been. It was always about community or the tribe, right?
Yeah, yeah. And gosh, what you just said reminded me of my early days. And when I was a photographer, community building was different because everything was in person and everything was my local area. And I had to really look back and say, what did I do that worked? And how can I transition that online? And when you said you're elevating a business every day, I had this crazy idea because I was a teacher at the time and I was stuck proctoring an SOL and I was reading a book called The Science of Getting Rich.
Oh,
Great self-development book, especially to be my first one. I mean, it was life-changing, but I had this idea to have people nominate their favorite local small business. And I would go to that business and I would interview the owner and I would take pictures, professional pictures for them, and I would feature it on my blog, of course, at no cost other than their time.
yeah,
And I won because I got to learn from a successful business owner and put it on my blog, for just networking and lifting their business up. And I probably did about 10 or 15 businesses, but I swear that alone made such a difference in getting my name out there and getting my name out there in a generous way that people just appreciated. And every business owner wants to sit in a chair and tell their story, right? Like I was shining the light on them and letting them talk about themselves that had nothing to do with me.
yeah.
And it's those little things that turn out to be really big things when it comes to community building.
And I love that because I accidentally got my first job by doing that. And I didn't know what I was doing. It was somebody gave me an assignment and said, "Jeff, we're working on this project. We want to." I was going into accounting, and they wanted to interview accounting firms to find out what they were doing with students and how they were helping students grow in the profession. And I was the only one willing to go talk to these accounting firms. So I went out and I talked to each of them and I interviewed them. And then, I was in charge of talking and going back and forth to make sure the write up was what they wanted. And I got more offers than anybody in my year. And when I graduated from university, it was a tough year. There were, layoffs and cutbacks. I had more offers than any of my colleagues because I was the one who had met them all. And they're like, "Oh, hi, Jeff." I'd be in the waiting room with 10 other candidates. And the managing partner would go, "Hi, Jeff. Hey, I didn't know you were interviewing. Come on in. I'll introduce you to the team." And everybody else you could hear them going, "Oh crap.
Yeah, like he's got an in.
He knows the guy. How does he know the guy?" But
Yeah.
I realized when COVID hit, I read The Go Giver with Bob Berg and John David
Mm.
Mann, and I went, "Oh my God, that's a thing. I can be the connector." And
Mm-hmm.
then I've evolved rapidly since then. But for me, the big thing was you can't do networking on Zoom. And I went, "What? Watch me."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's figure outable, right? I love that. I mean, if you are the person that connects somebody to their biggest client or their favorite client, they're going to remember you forever. Just like you said, thank you, Joey, right?
Yep.
Like you will forever remember Joey for the connections that he has made in your circle and your business. And that's how we get loud. That's how we stand out. It's not by like screaming from the rooftops, buy my stuff,
Yep.
right? It's by being that dot connector for other people.
Well, and it's funny because, and I'm gonna give Joey. So we're talking about Joey Vitale. Joey, I hope you're blushing right now because we love you. Um, Joey looked me in the eye, and this is a real friend. He's like, "Jeff, why are you wasting your breath teaching people how to network?" He said, "Why don't you just join Bob Berg's Success Alliance, the Go Giver Success Alliance?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You're trying to find people who get networking. Go hang out with Bob Berg and his community." And I went, "Oh crap. That is so obvious. Why didn't Jeff think about it?" But I was
Yeah.
busy building communities, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like go where they already exist and they already understand the value of it.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
I meet a go giver, I don't have to teach them that, there's giving and there's reciprocity. They
Yes.
follow the 5 laws of stratospheric success.
Yes, yes, yes.
So Joey pointed out that obvious moment, and I went, ah. So sometimes you need to join communities as well, not just build them. That was my big lesson.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's talk about, you and I were talking before we started recording about, physical networking, online networking, and that weird, some people have a hybrid model and some people are trying to transition. Let's talk about that because I feel like those lessons would be valuable.
Yeah, so I mentioned I had an in-person group before COVID, and I was actually already trying to transition it to virtual, and COVID just sped that up. But I was like, what do you mean? Like, why aren't these people getting on Zoom? Why isn't this working? And it's because my in-person network was built of actual in person, right? Like people that have brick and mortars, people that had creative local wedding industry businesses. And they're just not trained to be on Zoom the way that you and I are. They're not accustomed to it. They're not used to it. So they never really fully bought into, let me sit behind my computer and get on Zoom versus like, let's meet at a coffee shop and really talk business. And I think it's easy for people on Zoom to translate to in person. Like it's so exciting to finally meet someone in person that you've known on Zoom forever. Like if I actually got to meet you in person, Jeff, versus I already know this person in person. Now I'm going to go over to Zoom. So I realized it just wasn't going to work. So I keeping my virtual, and then I'm going to keep my in person, and that's just how it's going to be. But I had to go through this wonderful years, 3, 4 years of a journey to kind of figure that out.
Well,
So shortcut, there you go, people.
yeah, and that's the thing. Everything's figure outable, and
Yeah.
there are some. And by the way, I'm just going to share something with you, Elizabeth, that blew my mind. I have a friend who has an amazing community, Janine Bolin. If you haven't met her, I will make sure you two meet. Um, she found out by accident, so she decided she has this Friday networking group. Everybody comes for virtual coffee, and she was posting it on YouTube for the attendees so that we didn't have to ask for notes or introductions, whatever. there's an entire class of introverted people who are so introverted, they watch the YouTube videos without attending, and then they'll send her questions saying, Janine, would you mind answering this question on your next Friday thing? It's actually turned into a bit of a mastermind community. And I
Yeah.
never once thought of masterminding as a spectator sport.
Huh. I could
Yeah.
see the value in that though. I could definitely see the value in that.
It's like, true entrepreneurs just like you just said, huh, I can see the value in that. You know, Janine she was trying to help us and,
Yeah.
she was trying to connect people. And I think one of the things I would say, and I want your opinion on this, those people who truly get community building, we tend to come across people think we're either confused or I've been called a communist because somebody said I don't trust people who don't like money. um, but the reality is, I think when you build a community, you find money in places that nobody else is looking. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, 100%. So, and we were just talking about this when I was in California last week. When you network over whatever it is that you sell, right? Like I help people with Facebook groups, right? Like it's not my life's purpose. My life's purpose is to help people do what they love and make living doing it. But that is like my micro niche that helps people find me because it's a real problem that people wake up with in the morning, right? They don't wake up saying, I need to learn how to be a better leader and learn how to build a community. They wake up griping because their social media isn't getting them the results that they want. So taking this micro niche and then putting that out to the world, in my mind, thinking, oh, I'm just like figuring out some revenue generating activities with my superpower. But what that turned into, and to your point, is now people come to me and they say, hey, I'm launching. This is going to be like an $80,000 launch, and I want to add on a Facebook community. Can you do the strategy for me? Can you be the visionary for my community? And I'm like, well, yes, I can. And that will be $15,000 or whatever, And it's like, that's why this one-to-one, or we call them like VIP opportunities, when you really master networking, community building, you're going to get those personal introductions from people who know what you're truly the expert at. And those opportunities will just start falling out of the sky, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode. So yeah, I mean, that's exactly how it happens, is these VIP offers versus like what I'm actually building my name up for,
It is funny because, for me personally, I was just looking to grow my accounting practice. That's where
Mhm.
I was like, okay, it was a very boring question, was how do I get more clients? And then I started, how do I get better clients? And then it was like,
Mhm.
how do I stop having to do marketing and sales and just, and then at some point I realized that the more I did with my hands, whether it was, counting, tax, whatever, the less I actually made because I had to do more and more and more. But
Mm.
as I built community, and I think the best community builders I know, we're weirdly curious about everything. We like look at things and go, why not?
Yeah.
And I know that from chatting with you, it is fascinating that what people think we do is not where we actually make our money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, what I'm noticing is as these opportunities start to pop up, is that as I'm meeting people, they're going, huh, she's like either really smart or she brought something out of me that nobody else has been able to. Like they can't quite name what it is,
Yep.
but what it is I'm authentically listening to them. And
Yep.
instead of pushing my methodologies and my opinions down their throat, I'm saying, hey, Jeff, like what I'm hearing in the language that you're saying is that you want to pursue this, right? Like I can actually absorb the words and the problems that they're speaking about, and I can speak directly to that problem. Even though I may have no solution, I operate as if everybody else already knows their own solution, and I'm helping them uncover what they already know. And again, I don't know what to call that. Like, it's my coaching skills, but it's not something that people wake up in the morning knowing they need. But
Yep.
they meet me and they're like, I want to work with her. right? Like they think I'm going to poof, like fix their marketing or something. I don't know, but they just say, tell me more about what you do. Right. Like I will be on a podcast talking about indie law on behalf of Joey's business. And I will get an email a week later saying, I want to hear about what you do.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I don't know what to call that. I don't know how to put it in a box, but
Um,
self-development will help.
Authentic listening seems like the key. And by the way, I do that too. And I think one of the things I think is people overvalue doing and they undervalue thinking.
Mm,
And to be a really good community builder, you have to be really good at thinking and,
mm,
asking those questions like, little things like, I have a group, join my group so I can pitch to you. That doesn't appeal to anybody. But,
mm-hmm.
hey, we're going to help veterans. My personal passion is helping veterans and ending the acceptance around veterans and suicide. I would love to end that as a problem.
Yeah.
Now, that's a community I would build for free. And luckily, there are some great people out there who've built those. What I love doing now, and this is probably where Liz hangs out too. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Either way.
You can tell we're friends. I have to remember her professional branding and her personal. So sorry, Liz. Oh,
All good. All good. We go way back.
we go way back. But the reality is now I'm bringing communities together, and that is so powerful because and I think this is what you're doing in your world, Elizabeth, is creating those communities and then saying, oh, by the way, did you know this?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
it's powerful when community. And by the way, I thought I was alone, and when I was whining about my life and how I don't meet other community builders, my friend Joey just said, no, 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 you need to talk to Elizabeth. And I'm pretty sure we were best friends the first 5 minutes. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
And the
it's just so easy to talk to people who get it, right? And that energetic signature is there, you know?
Yeah. And I've learned, I'm going to share this with you, Elizabeth, and for the audience. People come up to me and say, you need to tell me why community building is a thing. And I'm like, no, I
Mm,
don't. And they said, well, does that mean you can't? And I said, no, it means I won't. And people get
yeah.
really annoyed by that. But, it's like trying to explain the color yellow to somebody who's never seen the color yellow. You got
Yeah.
to see it to understand it.
I would probably, I'm trying to think of how I would answer that question if somebody cornered me. I think I would say, tell me a successful entrepreneur or business owner that you really admire, right? Or it doesn't have to be a business owner, whatever kind of industry they're in. Maybe they're a runner, maybe they do yoga, whatever. But, tell me someone that you view as successful. And um, I would then say, I bet they have a community around their business or their mission, or I might even ask, like, well, what's their mission? How are they changing the world?
Yeah.
And usually, if we admire somebody to that extent, they're probably changing the world, and they'd probably be able to articulate, like, oh my God, I love Oprah. Like, look at all the things that she's done. Look at all the people that she's donated to. Oh, do you think Oprah has a community? Right? Like, it's right there in front of them. They're just not identifying that that's what separates those successful people. They're just thinking, oh, this person's successful. They built an empire by
Yeah.
themselves, like this whole
Yeah.
overnight millionaire
One-handed, brick
thing.
by brick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like nobody's an overnight millionaire. Like that's not a thing. They probably failed for 10 years doing
Yeah.
things that we didn't see.
Well, and the interesting thing, the best brands, in my opinion, they've got that community. If you don't believe in community, go up to somebody who's riding a Harley, wearing a Harley vest, and say Harley sucks, and watch what they do to you. Um,
Exactly.
go mock the people standing in front of the Apple store waiting for the latest iPhone. Um, that's the power of community. I mean, literally, you think about the Harley people, they tattoo it on their bodies.
Yeah.
That's that ride or die mentality. Now you look at the billionaires that nobody likes, I won't name names, but they don't have a community. They are, look at me, I'm great. And it's about their
Yeah.
ego.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, one of my pet peeves. I try not to have many because remember, I don't use judgment, but is this whole like self-made millionaire concept, right? Like people that in the intro to their podcast, I'm a self-made millionaire. And I'm like, A of
That
all,
is,
that's not attracting me, but B of all, like somebody helped you. Like I already saw you on a podcast with so and so 3 years ago when you were having your big explosion. Like, what about that person where you leverage their, platform?
yeah.
Because I just, man, when I really get in my gratitude like feels, like I think about so many people that have mentored me along the way. And, like if I'm visualizing myself in a successful place, I'm like, man, like Joey really helped me get here. James really helped me get here. That conversation with Jeff really moved the needle on this limited belief that I had. And I can just have this overwhelming sense of gratitude for all the people and all the things. And I would never say, oh, I'm self-made, right?
Yeah.
Like that just is the
Yeah. That,
opposite
that,
of a community builder. Sometimes I'm like,
again,
man, like if I could just bring everyone with me,
yeah. Well, I would argue the self-made people, somebody changed your diapers and fed you when you were a baby.
There you
I'm just
go.
saying you didn't do it all yourself.
Yeah. Yep. 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 And I know that's like, okay, they probably don't mean it that extreme, but still, like, gratitude is the best attitude. And you can tell in people's energy and their way of being, if they come from a place of gratitude.
Well, the funny thing is, I personally do not know a single successful person who isn't grateful for something and doesn't have some, it's funny. In one community, they're debating who's got the best gratitude journal. And I was like, wow, I'm grateful that we can have this conversation, but my journal's better than yours, clearly.
Oh my gosh. No, I would be at the bottom of the list. My gratitude journal needs some work, but I'm like, I feel all the gratitude.
Well, and that's the thing, I think if you have to journal, good for you, you're on that path. But once you truly are grateful, you don't need to remember to be grateful. A-
Yes.
And I see that, one of my favorite things, I love interviewing people who've measured success in terms of, Fred Reichheld, who created the Net Promoter Score. He wrote a book called Winning on Purpose. And if you haven't read it, highly recommend it.
Mm,
He talks about he wishes he would have, instead of calling it the Net Promoter Score, he wishes he would have called it Net Lives Enriched.
mm,
And I got chills reading that because he's clearly, he's world famous for his business advisory and consulting. And this book he wrote, I think he was dealing with stage 4 cancer. He had literally said, I'm writing this so that the world gets this before I pass. But his legacy, he wanted it to be about building that community of raving fans.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's really beautiful. I had thought of a friend of mine who he's a multimillionaire in real estate. And he said, Liz, I have helped 3 people become millionaires and I want to help 9, you know, like, how can I take this? And he just helped them, totally for free, just friends of his, like helping them get started in real estate, whatever that looks like. And, a couple of years later, like they made their first million and he was like, I want to do more of that. Like, that's not even what makes me money, but how cool, what an honor to help my friends do what I've done.
Well,
Yeah.
and I love those people who get it
Yeah.
because, you know, if I'm a multimillionaire and I help somebody else become a millionaire, I'm not giving them, it doesn't take away from me. In fact, personally, it elevates me because I can say,
Mhm.
wow, I helped somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another misconception out there, is this whole idea of like competition. And if I shine the light on another business owner who does what I do, then my audience is going to run over there. It's like, it's simply not true. Like, think about, again, the people that you admire the most. If they were to tell you about somebody else, are you going to now leave them? I mean, when I was a photographer, my brides would even come to me and say, hey, I chose you because you're constantly shouting out and lifting up the photography industry as a whole, and you're not afraid to lose business. Like, that just says so much about your I hate to use the word like confidence, right? But like there's a level of authority and being sure of yourself when you're not afraid to like leverage somebody else.
Yeah. And I think, again, as community builders, you and I could somehow, I don't know how we could try to compete against each other. It's just not in my vocabulary.
Yeah,
But the reality is, if Elizabeth has 100 friends and Jeff has 100 friends and we come together, Elizabeth now has 200 friends and Jeff has
exactly.
200. There's
Yeah.
no division. It's all, and quite frankly, I'm going to be honest, it's not even addition, it's exponential, because my 100 friends probably each have 100 friends. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes magical. And I think that's where, if you're grateful, and I love your philosophy here, I don't believe you can be a good community builder unless you've reached a certain set of self-awareness where you can see the good in others, and sometimes you shine that light when they can't see it.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like I've always had this, ability to see potential in other people. Um, and it just brings me so much joy when they start to see that potential too. I mean, this all started for me when other women were like, I want to learn how to be a photographer. And very quickly I learned, God, I hate teaching somebody how to use a camera. Like, good
You
God, it
don't want
took
to
me
talk
long
F
enough.
settings?
Yeah, I mean, and I could do it. I would never withhold information, but I just found it didn't light me up. It didn't bring me joy to sit next to them and tell them things they can learn on YouTube, right? Like that
Yeah.
just, you go YouTube it, like it's there, right? But what did light me up and completely just changed what I wanted to do with my life essentially was seeing women fall in love with this idea that they could be successful doing something that they love. Like there was really something magical there for me, and like just being the person to lift them up and say this is possible. I've always said like I want to be a professional show people what's possible person. What kind of job is
Hmm.
that, right?
That sounds like a perfect job. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, you know, buzzwords aside. I mean, when you show people what's possible in them, they don't know why, but they know that you're amazing, and it's not anything to do with you. It's the mirror that you held up.
Yeah.
And the questions you ask.
Yeah. And it's not like, here, do it the way I did it. It's, let's see what's possible for you, right? Let's see what's going to work for you. And really knowing that difference. I mean, people think like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to show people how I got 400 people on my email list overnight and I'll tell them to do the exact same things I did. I'm like, but it doesn't work that way. Like your energetic signature, the way you show up in the world really defines how people are going to flock to you or repel.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that's, I'm going to give you my broad experience on photography. I know the settings on a camera. And by the way, I like phones now that have automatic settings. But it has little to do with the technical skills of the camera and more to do with the eye of the photographer. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the metaphor for what you do, is you find the beauty in someone that they didn't know was there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, photography is you can have the greatest camera in the world, but if you don't have the ability to see the person on the other side and to know how to bring out their goodness, right? Like their happiness, guys, you want to see someone uncomfortable, tell them you're about to take their picture, right? So it's like there's a lot of skills that play there. And like usually I say something like, I'm way more awkward than you are. Give me like 5 minutes and I promise you're going to be comfortable and I'm going to be tripping over this rock. Like it's all
Yeah.
fine.
Well, it's funny. One of the biggest obstacles I encountered to Zoom was people weren't used to seeing themselves on camera.
Yeah, yeah.
And with my podcast, people were like, "Could we do audio only?" And I'm like, "No." And people they unbooked because they're like, "Oh, I don't want to be on camera." And I'm like, "Okay, I can't force you, but okay."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, that makes me sad for them. I want to go help them because it really showing our faces helps with that connection piece. Like I've noticed a lot of the times that I've done audio only, there's more kind of awkward interruptions. You can't read somebody's body language again with like the authentic listening. And I know Zoom is different. Like can't quite tell if I'm looking at Jeff or looking at myself, but there's still that piece of being able to like sense your interest in what I'm saying that doesn't happen on audio.
Yeah, and quite frankly, it's way more interesting for people to watch you and I interacting. And I know there's somebody out there wondering what's hiding behind Jeff's little view of the planet, and they're wondering, hey, where did Liz get that cool do one thing that makes you happy? Like,
Yeah. I know.
but it's more rich and engaging. Well, Liz, I could talk to you all day, and often I think you and I have. Is there something I should have asked you about community building, networking, that you'd love to share with the audience that you haven't yet?
I don't think so. I think just if you're trying to improve this skill in community building and networking, just ask yourself the simple question of who can I help today, right? One person. And I always say if I help one person today, that's plenty. And sometimes you and I are both visionaries and I'm like avoiding my actual to-do list like the plague. I'm like, let's just jump in my inbox and see who I can introduce today or who I can help today, because that's so much more fulfilling for me and pays such higher dividends than going and fixing a Zap and Zapier.
Yeah. It's funny. I was supposed to be working on a presentation last week, and I accidentally wrote a children's book. And somebody's like, "How do you accidentally write a children's book?" And I was like, "I was bored." I said,
Yes.
"How can I make this presentation fun?" And then I'm like, "Oh my God, this looks like a children's book."
Here's
So I
my
think,
children's book. I make a planner. I'm working on getting a planner that I can sell on Amazon because that has so much to do with the work I'm really doing, Jeff. But as creatives, that's what happens.
yeah, I was always told stop daydreaming, and I'm like, I don't want to live in a world where I don't daydream, because
Yeah.
that's where we come from. Now, Elizabeth,
Mhm.
thank you so much for being on this show with me, and I look forward to sharing your message with my people in the book.
Thank you so, so much. This was wonderful, Jeff.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.